Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to highlight 3 things about PayPal stock that every interested investor should know.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
Now let's get right into it, starting with active accounts. Every PayPal stock investor should know what's going on with PayPal's active accounts. Now, what I have here is a chart of PayPal's total active accounts going back to the second quarter of 2022. And what you could see is total active accounts peaked at 435 million. Then it fell to 433. Then it fell to 431. Then it fell to 428. So that is 3 straight quarters of consecutive decline in active accounts. To make matters worse, the last quarter went from a 2 million drop to a 3 million drop. So you had 2 million down, 2 million down, and now 3 million down. So not only do you have a downward trend here, that downward trend is accelerating, going bad in a faster direction. Now, it wasn't that long ago before PayPal management was talking about reaching 1 billion active accounts. 1 billion. So they were talking about growing their total active accounts to reach 1 billion. Now, that seemed like a realistic target at the time because if you look at Visa and MasterCard, they've got over 4 billion active Visa cards in circulation today. And so you think of that and you say, okay, that makes sense. If PayPal, it's already on an international scale, it can grow to reach that level, and it was growing. And so you thought they could reach it before they hit this snag in starting in the fourth quarter of 2022. Now, management says that the active accounts declined by 2.8 million relative to second quarter. This is primarily reflecting churn of minimally engaged accounts and the strategic decision to focus on driving higher activity levels with existing active accounts. So management is saying this isn't because we've experienced a decrease in interest from customers. Rather, it was our decision to focus on higher value customers and less focus on just growing the number of customers. We want to focus on higher value customers and increase our penetration with higher value customers. And if you look at this next trend, you can see that part is working. TPA, which is transaction per active account, reached 56.6, which is up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters at least. It was 48.7 in the second quarter of 2022, and it's rising steadily all the way up to 56.6, meaning that customers that PayPal has now are using PayPal more often in their transactions. And since PayPal earns money as a percentage of each transaction, that's good news for PayPal stock investors. Finally, PayPal's incoming CEO said in its latest conference call that I can tell you right now, what I care about most is high quality customer growth and profitable revenue growth. So this indicates to me that this decline in customer active accounts might continue for the near future as the company focuses on higher value customers instead of focusing on just growing the total number of customers. And given the evidence we've seen from increasing engagement from existing customers, that plan seems to be working so far. Still, it is a risk for PayPal stock investors because we don't know, as a shareholder myself, I do own PayPal stock. We don't know how far this decline is going to go, how many more millions of customers they're going to lose, how many of these 400 something million active accounts are not actively engaged or not very active at all. So that poses a risk, and that's something that I'm paying close attention to, and it's something that I think every PayPal stock investor should know. The next thing that I think every PayPal stock investor should know is the declining transaction profit margin, and I have that highlighted in yellow here. PayPal's transaction profit margin peaked at 51% in the third quarter of 2022, and that too has been falling consecutively 1, 2, 3, 4 straight quarters falling from 51% all the way down to 45.4%. This means that on a transaction by transaction basis, PayPal's profit margin is falling on each transaction. That again is not good news for PayPal stock investors for similar reasons why I highlighted above why that was not good news for PayPal stock investors. We don't know how much longer this decrease in transaction profit margin will go, how much more it will fall, and where it will ultimately end up. Part of the reason investors like myself are attracted to PayPal is because of that asset-light business model that generates strong profit margins, right? A 45% transaction profit margin is still quite strong and still quite attractive. However, is that going to keep falling? And how much more is it going to fall, or is it going to stabilize? If I was confident that the transaction profit margin would be at a low at 45% and won't go that much lower, I would want to own more shares of PayPal stock. But I don't know how much more it's going to fall. I don't know how much more it has to go. And that has me a bit concerned about my shares in PayPal stock. So the primary cause for this decrease in PayPal's transaction profit margin is a falling transaction take rate, or a total take rate. Now I have that highlighted here, peaking at 2.07% and 1.88% for the total take rate and transaction take rate. That has fallen 1, 2, 3 straight quarters from 2.07 to 1.91 and from 1.88 to 1.72. Now this take rate is what PayPal takes from each transaction, right? So you could think of, let's say if I use PayPal to pay for something, I pay $100 and PayPal will take 1.72% or 1.91% depending on the type of transaction and the type of merchant I use my PayPal account to purchase, right? So PayPal out of that $100 will get roughly $2, right, for itself as revenue. Now, of course, if that transaction take rate is falling, that's going to decrease the transaction margin because PayPal still has costs associated to each transaction, right? It still has to process that transaction. It has the technology behind the transaction. There's a certain amount of fraud that will happen and it must reimburse or investigate those reported fraud cases, and so on and so on. And so with a higher transaction take rate, the transaction profit margin will be higher. Management saying that it's lapping elevated contractual compensation from merchants last year. That means last year, PayPal was charging merchants a higher transaction take rate than it is this year. So it's offering a more competitive price to merchants so that merchants can say, okay, we will accept PayPal as a payment method. So that's why the transaction take rate is falling, because of offering better prices to merchants. Now, that's not typically a good sign, because that shows that you need to offer incentives and promotions to attract customers. That shows that you don't have strong pricing power, and that's not good news for PayPal stock investors. Hopefully, this trend, again, like the others, will bottom out and reverse and turn higher, but this is definitely a risk for PayPal shareholders like myself, and something that I am paying close attention to, and something that I think all PayPal stock investors should know. So the last thing, the third thing that I think all PayPal stock investors should know is that for now, the major financial metrics are still performing well. I'm talking revenue, earnings, cash flow. They're still showing solid growth. Now, the metrics that I talked about earlier, the first and second thing that PayPal stock investors should know, those will eventually lead to these metrics worsening. But for now, these metrics haven't worsened yet. You look at revenue in the third quarter grew at 8%. The non-GAAP earnings per share grew 20% to $1.30, above what management was expecting. And for the full year 2023, earnings per share are expected to grow by 21% to $4.98. Now, all of this does not indicate a company that's in decline or a company that's struggling, because those metrics that we talked about earlier, they haven't yet started to decrease the performance in revenue, in earnings, and in cash flow. However, they are still troubling because if those trends continue, they will start to impact these metrics here. So because of the strong revenue and cash flow, PayPal is able to spend $5 billion using its free cash flow to buy back PayPal stock. And if you've been following PayPal stock, you know the price has been under pressure. PayPal stock is not trading expensively, it's relatively cheap looking at it on a forward price to earnings basis. And so PayPal is using all of this billions of dollars in free cash flow it's generating right now to buy back its stock. And to me, that indicates a good sign. It indicates that management is confident in its prospects. Management thinks these trends that are worsening are not going to get much worse, that they will stabilize and they will likely improve. I also like the direction that the new CEO is taking the company in, looking at profitable growth, looking at high value customers, and not chasing after these low value customers that are not going to be they're not going to add to the bottom line. So far, it looks like the metrics talked about earlier, the declining active accounts, declining transaction margin, are not hurting the company's revenue and profitability and cash flow prospects just yet. However, if they do continue, it could get worse. So that's the third thing that I think all PayPal stock investors should know, is that for now, the company's still growing revenue 8%, close to mid to high single digits, close to double digits, and growing earnings per share and cash flow very nicely. So for now, these metrics are still performing strongly. So there you have it. Those are the three things that I think all PayPal stock investors should know. First, they're losing active accounts consecutively and it's getting worse. Second, their transaction margin is falling due to declining take rates. And finally, the top line earnings, cash flow, and profits, revenue are still looking strong, still performing well for PayPal stock investors. All right, but before I let you go, if you gained any value from this video, please subscribe to the channel. It'll really help me make more videos just like this one. If you've already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it, and thank you so much for watching.